Red Bull may have just found the weapon that turns the RB22 from a wounded contender into the most dangerous car on the grid. After Max Verstappen revealed that the car was suffering from two separate problems, and telemetry from Silverstone exposed just how costly those weaknesses had become, the pressure inside Red Bull could not be higher. But before Spa, something has changed. Because Red Bull is now being linked with an upgrade that could attack the car's balance problems, improve its high-speed performance, and unlock the potential of an internal combustion engine advantage already attracting serious attention across the paddock. And Spa is the perfect place to reveal whether it is real. More than 7 kilometers. Long flat-out sections. Violent elevation changes. High-speed corners that punish the smallest instability. At this circuit, one weak area can destroy an entire lap. But one successful upgrade can transform everything. The biggest surprise is that Red Bull's secret weapon may not be one dramatic new part. It may be the way several improvements finally connect. If the team has solved the two problems Verstappen identified, while turning its power unit strength into usable performance, Red Bull will not simply arrive at Spa with a faster car. It will arrive with a warning. And the detail that could terrify its rivals most is still hidden beneath the headline. To understand why this upgrade matters, you have to begin with the position Red Bull was already in before Spa. The RB22 was not being described as a completely broken car. That would have been easier. A completely broken car gives engineers one clear mission. Find the major weakness, remove it, and move forward. But Red Bull's situation appears more complicated. Max Verstappen referred to two problems after a painful qualifying session, while separate telemetry analysis raised concerns about what was happening underneath the visible result. That means Red Bull may not be chasing one simple fix. It may be trying to solve two connected weaknesses at the same time. And that distinction changes everything. Because in Formula One, one problem can often be managed. The driver changes the way the car is positioned. The engineers adjust the setup. The team accepts a small loss in one part of the lap to gain performance somewhere else. Two problems are different. Solve the first, and the second may become worse. Protect the rear of the car, and the front may stop responding. Sharpen the front, and the rear may become less stable. Reduce drag for the straights, and the car may lose confidence through the corners. Add support for the corners, and straight-line speed may suffer. It becomes a moving target. And Spa is the worst possible place to bring a car that forces those compromises. The circuit is longer than 7 kilometers, but the number alone does not explain the challenge. The real difficulty is how many different personalities Spa has inside one lap. There are sections where the car needs to cut through the air with as little resistance as possible. Then, only moments later, the driver needs grip, stability, and absolute trust at high speed. The car must climb. It must compress. It must change direction while carrying enormous momentum. And then it must slow down, rotate, and accelerate cleanly again. A weakness that remains hidden at another circuit can become impossible to ignore at Spa. That is why Red Bull's timing is so important. This is not a circuit where the team can disguise an unstable balance with one strong sector. The whole car is examined. The aerodynamics, the mechanical grip, the power delivery, the tire behavior, and most importantly, the driver's confidence. Because confidence is not an emotional extra in Formula One. It is performance. When a driver trusts the front of the car, the steering input becomes cleaner. When the rear feels predictable, the driver can return to the throttle earlier. When both ends work together, the driver can carry speed without making constant corrections. But when that trust disappears, the losses multiply. The driver hesitates. The tires slide. The temperatures rise. The next corner becomes harder. Then the driver has to protect the car instead of attacking the circuit. This may be why the reference to two problems matters so much. The first problem may be visible in the driver's immediate reaction. The second may appear later, through tire behavior, consistency, or the way one compromise creates another. The source material does not identify those two problems in technical detail. That means any exact claim about the affected components would be speculation. But the pattern itself is still significant. Red Bull was not facing a single isolated complaint. The team was facing a combination of issues serious enough to be described as especially painful after qualifying. And now the attention turns toward the RB22 upgrade. But here is what most people miss. An upgrade does not need to eliminate both problems completely to transform the car. It only needs to change the relationship between them. Imagine a door that is difficult to open because the hinges are misaligned. You could push harder. You could change the handle. You could even strengthen the frame. But the real solution is making the pieces work together. Once the alignment improves, the entire door feels different. The force required changes. The movement becomes smoother. And a problem that seemed to exist in several places suddenly becomes much easier to control. That may be the real promise behind Red Bull's Spa package. Not a miracle part. Not one spectacular piece of bodywork. A better connection between the systems already inside the car. And this is where the engine discussion becomes impossible to ignore. The source material also points toward talk of a possible internal combustion engine advantage connected to Red Bull. That does not prove Red Bull will dominate Spa. It does not confirm a specific power gain. And it does not reveal how large any advantage might be. But it introduces a second layer to the story. Because power alone does not guarantee lap time. A strong engine can help on the straights. But if the car arrives at the straight with a poor corner exit, some of that advantage is already lost. If the rear tires are sliding, the driver cannot apply the power cleanly. If the aerodynamic setup creates too much resistance, additional power may be used simply to fight drag. This is why the upgrade and the power unit cannot be judged separately. The real weapon would be the combination. A car stable enough to put the power down. An aerodynamic package efficient enough to preserve speed. A balance predictable enough to let Verstappen attack without waiting for the car to settle. That is where a theoretical advantage becomes usable. And usable performance is what terrifies rivals. Not a headline number. Not a rumor. Not a single fast sector. Repeatable speed. Speed that works in qualifying. Speed that survives tire wear. Speed that remains available when the car is following traffic. Speed the driver can trust when conditions change. That is a much more dangerous form of performance. Because rivals can respond to one obvious strength. They can reduce wing angle. They can change their setup. They can focus on defending the straight. But a car that improves in several connected areas becomes harder to counter. Protect against its straight-line speed, and it may attack through the corners. Prepare for qualifying, and it may become stronger over a race distance. Force it into traffic, and it may manage the tires well enough to remain dangerous. This is why the RB22 story cannot be reduced to one new component. The upgrade matters because of what it may unlock around it. But there is still a major risk. New parts can create clean answers in simulations and confusing answers on the circuit. The car moves in the real world. It pitches under braking. It rises under acceleration. It rolls as the driver turns. The tires deform. The wind changes direction. And every one of those movements can alter the airflow. So the first test at Spa will not be whether the RB22 looks different. It will be whether it behaves consistently. Does the front respond the same way at different speeds? Does the rear remain stable when the fuel load changes? Can the driver repeat the same line without correcting the car? Does the improvement survive more than one perfect lap? Those questions will reveal far more than the first timing screen. And this is where the pressure moves inside the garage. Red Bull must separate real progress from temporary conditions. A faster lap may come from a cleaner track. A stronger sector may come from tire preparation. A better run may happen when the wind changes. The engineers need evidence. The driver needs confidence. And both have to reach the same conclusion before the weekend moves forward. That is why Spa could become either the beginning of Red Bull's recovery, or the moment the deeper weakness becomes impossible to hide. Because if the upgrade only moves the problem from one end of the car to the other, the team remains trapped. But if it changes the connection between Verstappen's two concerns, and allows the possible power unit strength to reach the track more effectively, the RB22 becomes something completely different. Not perfect. Not unbeatable. But finally coherent. And that is the first quality every dangerous Formula One car needs. The next question is even bigger. Because Red Bull does not only need this weapon to work in clean air. It needs it to survive the one condition that destroys confidence, overheats tires, and turns theoretical speed into frustration. Traffic. And that is where the true value of the Spa upgrade will begin to reveal itself. Traffic is where Formula One upgrades stop being theoretical. In clean air, the car receives the airflow the engineers designed it to receive. Everything is more predictable. The front wing works in cleaner conditions. The balance is easier to understand. The driver can place the car on the ideal line. But once another car appears ahead, that world changes. The air becomes disturbed. The front of the car loses some of the support it had before. The steering can feel lighter. The front tires can begin to slide. And the driver may suddenly need to wait before returning to the throttle. That delay matters. Especially at Spa. Because a poor exit does not only cost time in one corner. It follows the car all the way down the next straight. One small hesitation becomes a larger gap. One correction becomes lost momentum. And the overtaking opportunity can disappear before the attack has even started. This is why Red Bull's upgrade has to do more than make the RB22 faster by itself. It has to make the car more usable behind another machine. That is a much harder problem. Imagine running behind a large truck on a windy road. The air around you does not feel smooth. It moves. It changes direction. It becomes difficult to predict. A Formula One driver experiences something similar when following closely, only at much higher speed, with much less room for error. The car ahead creates a turbulent wake. That wake can reduce grip. The following driver then has to make small corrections. Those corrections create more tire temperature. The tires begin to lose performance, and the driver may be forced to drop back. That is the trap. To attack, the Red Bull needs to remain close. But remaining close can damage the grip needed to complete the attack. This is where Red Bull's possible secret weapon becomes more interesting. If the upgrade makes the car less sensitive to disturbed air, Verstappen may be able to follow more closely through the corners. That would change the entire shape of a battle. He would not need to wait for a large mistake. He could create pressure. The driver ahead would see the Red Bull in the mirrors. Defensive lines would begin earlier. Braking points would move. Corner exits would become compromised. And one forced decision could create the opening Red Bull needs. That is what makes a car dangerous. Not only the ability to overtake. The ability to make another driver expect the overtake. Pressure changes behavior. A driver who feels safe uses the ideal line. A driver under threat protects the inside. That defensive choice can reduce corner speed. It can damage the exit. It can force the tires to work harder. And suddenly, the car behind is controlling the fight without even completing the move. But for that to happen, the RB22 must remain stable. The front cannot disappear when the airflow becomes dirty. The rear cannot become unpredictable when Verstappen changes line. The tires cannot overheat after only a few laps of following. And the driver cannot lose confidence at the exact moment he needs to attack. This is where the two problems mentioned after qualifying may become even more important. The available source does not identify those problems in detail. But if one involved balance, and another affected how consistently Verstappen could extract performance, then traffic would make both weaknesses more severe. A nervous front becomes more nervous. An unstable rear becomes harder to trust. A narrow setup window becomes even narrower. That is why the upgrade must not only add performance. It must add tolerance. Tolerance for wind. Tolerance for changing fuel loads. Tolerance for worn tires. Tolerance for disturbed airflow. A car with more tolerance gives the driver more freedom. And freedom is one of the most valuable advantages in Formula One. The driver can change line. The driver can attack from farther back. The driver can defend without immediately destroying the exit. The driver can adapt when the original plan is no longer available. That flexibility becomes especially important at Spa. The circuit creates different kinds of battles. One section rewards straight-line speed. Another rewards commitment through fast corners. Another demands strong braking and clean traction. A driver may begin the attack in one part of the lap, but the move is often created several corners earlier. That is the detail many people miss. The overtake does not begin when the car moves out of the slipstream. It begins when the following driver stays close through the previous sequence. It begins when the front tires remain alive. It begins when the rear stays calm on corner exit. It begins when the driver trusts the car enough to avoid lifting. That is why the upgrade could be far more important than one headline performance gain. If Red Bull improves the car before the straight, it improves the attack on the straight. And if the internal combustion engine advantage being discussed is real, that combination becomes even more dangerous. The source does not provide a verified power figure. It does not confirm a specific gain. But the possibility matters because power is most effective when the car can use it. Extra engine performance means little if the rear tires are spinning. It means less if the car arrives on the straight with a poor exit. It can be wasted if the aerodynamic package creates too much resistance. The real weapon is not power alone. It is power connected to balance. Power connected to traction. Power connected to efficiency. And once those pieces begin working together, the result can become much larger than the improvement in any single area. Think of a relay race. The fastest final runner cannot recover everything if the earlier handovers are poor. Each stage has to connect. The corner entry, the rotation, the traction, the acceleration, the straight line speed. If one part breaks the sequence, the whole lap suffers. But if every stage works, the car begins carrying performance from one section into the next. That is when an upgrade starts changing more than lap time.